So welcome to this week's episode of Leaders on a Mission, where I'm joined by inspiring leaders driven by the impact of creating a healthy and sustainable world. Now, in today's episode, I'm joined by Payam Pourtaheri, CEO and co-founder of AgroSpheres. Now, AgroSpheres are an innovative AgTech company developing the next generation of environmentally friendly crop protection products. And Payam, it's great to have you join us on the show from Virginia today. How are you?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. I'm not the biggest podcast guy, but for a fellow gunner, I'm happy to jump on, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's amazing where you find common bonds and synergies, isn't it, really? So, yeah, our love of the great Arsenal Football Club is something we have in common. And but it's great to have you on today. And maybe just to kick off with, just interested in, I suppose, just understanding some of the key forces that really help and shape, so I suppose some of the main influences that help shape you.
Yeah, I think I'm really blessed to be raised by two hardworking immigrant parents. My dad would work in the States for 6 months and then come back to Iran for 6 months while he had his green card. We were waiting for my mom and I to get a visa so that we could come to the States. Took about 4 or 5 years. I was 4 years old. It was July 3rd, 1998. I'm flying into Dulles Airport, Washington, D.C. There's fireworks. It's almost 4th of July. So it was a really special day for my family and coming here and having the great opportunities to grow up in Northern Virginia and then go to university at the University of Virginia. Seeing my parents work so hard all throughout my childhood, I think that was just a great example for me. I say risk taking is in our genetics. What's riskier than uprooting your life and going to a completely new country? So and they wanted me to have a more stable, I guess, life, med school or something like that. And I think going to become a doctor was always top of mind for them and for me until going to university, meeting Amir. Say key forces. I think my co-founder is one of the biggest ones. I was blessed to have such a great compatible co-founder in which we were both so aligned on a vision forward, and we had a ton of fun doing it. He was also thinking medical school as well, so we were both medically oriented, but in the engineering school. So kind of talking through, a research project like this. It was his idea actually to use this technology to go after pesticide degradation. And I thought it was really amazing challenge that we could go face. So yeah, we started working on it together, and that was 9 years ago, 8-9 years ago, where we first met to start working on this. So it's been a crazy journey.
So tell me, do you remember him, that first conversation when he was talking about some of the issues and challenges with pesticides? Was it that?
Yeah, he was he had kind of learned about this technology in a different, studying the agrocell technology. Could we use it in therapeutics? Could we use it he was really thinking about the best ways to use it. And then he spoke with, and how we met was we had a professor at the university. I was joining his lab to do research. And Amir had connected with him on his idea saying, hey, I have this agrocell technology. We think it could be a good, you're a pharma guy. I think I could do some pharmaceutical applications with this. And his instructions were just, pharma takes forever. I've been working on this thing for 15 years. We just got to phase 1, may not work out. You guys are going to be, twice your age by the time something could even happen with this. So, and go after the lower hanging fruit. And he came to me and said, hey, you should meet this. You should meet Amir. He has a really cool project we should bring into our lab. Since you're already in my lab, you guys can work on it together. So I've read some World Health Organization reports about pesticide usage, especially in developing countries where they don't have the proper protection gear. You see pictures of children and flip-flops spraying chemicals. It's not, it's something that we wanted to make a change on. So our first product, and actually our first use of the technology, was delivering enzymes that broke down organophosphate pesticides. So we, and thankful to the vineyards here in Charlottesville, Virginia. Mark, our professor, told us to go and talk to as many vineyards as possible. He said, worst case, you get a free wine tasting. Best case, you might get a company, a client, or a potential customer. And so we built this technology to break down pesticides. They let us on their fields at nighttime. We'd mark off the plots and we'd spray an organophosphate and then wait a few hours and then spray our stuff on it. And it would break it down in about 2 hours. So the technology worked, the enzymes were stable in the environment, and we were able to break down these pesticides. So it was a great proof of concept on the technology. But then once, it was, do farmers need this type of product? Does the industry need this type of product? And when we started going from like a student research project to a startup, the feedback was, well, if I'm spraying again, what upside do I have on that crop? Because it's technically not going to be organic. And I don't know if there's enough price to gain from like a residue-free label. And then the AgTech industry players are like, hey, we go through rigorous regulatory work to prove that our products are safe. What we're interested in are newer, safer, more targeted products. And so that was kind of our moment where we pivoted from delivering enzymes that broke down chemical pesticides to delivering biopesticides, biomolecules, more targeted pesticides. We can stabilize these unstable enzymes in the field with sun, heat, rain. So what else could we do to enhance and enable the biopesticides that farmers want to be spraying? They just don't have the tools right now.
Yeah, amazing. And tell me a little bit about the technology then, in terms of what it not just so much what it does. What does it consist of?
Yeah, so we have bacteria do the heavy lifting for us. So we basically coated these bacterial cells to make bioparticles for us. And they can make these bioparticles empty without any quote unquote active ingredient. And we can manually load small molecules, various types of biological agents into the capsule to stabilize them, both for shelf life, but also when you spray them on the field. And secondarily, which we're really excited about, is the microbe that makes the bioparticle. It can also make a biomolecule as it's making the particle. So in one-step fermentation, you have, at the end of it, you have an encapsulated biomolecule.
Wow, really? These microbes, they can be clever, can't they?
Yeah, they do a lot of the heavy lifting. If it's man-made, it's harder to make them consistent, harder to make them, as perfectly as possible. So they do a lot of great work for us.
Yeah, amazing. So you have no formulation almost. Is that the real kind of benefit of the process?
Yeah, I think it's one of the few instances where you have both manufacturing, formulation, and delivery all in one vertically integrated technology platform. So if you have a code for a biomolecule, you integrate it into our microbe, and at the end of fermentation, you have the formulation, the biomolecule all ready to go. And then we can dry it down or store it in like a liquid concentrate, and it's ready for field application.
Got it. Yeah. Tell me, where does the RNI kind of technology sit in with all this?
Yeah, so one of the early things we started working on was, basically RNAi, great potential, couple misses here and there in the industry, a lot of fatigue on this type of technology. Some areas you go and you mention RNAi, it looks like someone kind of jumped into a cold pool. Like there's a lot of issues with the technology, and rightfully so. I mean, it was great promise, and we just couldn't get it figured out in agriculture. They're figuring it out in pharma. They realized that delivery was the issue in pharmaceuticals, getting it to the right part of the body. And so that's the same kind of challenge we're fixing. At first it was, can you make targets specific enough? Can you make enough of it? Can you stabilize it in a field? Those three, I think, are all solved. But the final part is, when you target an insect or a fungi, does it get uptaken and processed correctly? Like, does it go where it needs to go? And I think that's where we're really specialized in, is ensuring that, the RNA you're delivering to a bug is going to be very differently formulated than an RNA you're delivering to a fungus or to a plant. So that's what we've been working on intensely, is kind of perfecting that delivery of RNA.
Got it. Yeah. And how much progress have you made with that?
We're in great progress. I think I'd say we're one of the few, if not only, groups that have had success in fall armyworm, which is intense, major global pest all over the world. Its gut is highly basic, so pH of 11. So things that go in there get deteriorated very quickly, and you need RNA stabilized in there for a couple hours to days to ensure that it's being uptaken into the system and processed.
Right.
So there would be experiments where we're receiving gut juice of insects, and our chemists and biologists are playing with these capsules to ensure they're like perfectly stable. You can't have them too stable where nothing releases, but you can't have it unstable where it releases immediately. So those are some really exciting exercises. But also another thing that we've been working with is our board director, Rob Fraley, former CTO Monsanto. He said stacking biomolecules is one of the best ways to deliver biological solutions. RNA, it's great that it's so specific, but the downside is that it's so specific. So there's going to be other pests and pathogens around that the RNA is not targeting. So are there other peptides or other type of biomolecules you could stack with the RNA so that you can get a bit more broad coverage and protection while still providing an environmentally friendly solution? So those are some of the, I think, major breakthroughs we've had recently, is finding good pairings of RNA and peptides that can target, the RNA may target the major pest in that region, but the peptide can kind of take care of the residual pests that can also do some damage to your crops.
Yeah, no, great. Look, it sounds like it's been an amazing journey, right? From, I suppose, idea through to kind of where you are now, 7.5 years, later. Did you always think, when you were, I suppose, university, did you always have in mind you were going to be a CEO? And was that something that you saw for yourself?
Honestly, no. And I think this was really, I think I've just been fortunate to be working with Amir, because I typically used to be like a go with the flow type of person. I started as a COO and co-founder, and I really like, the stuff that isn't quite sexy, getting HR going, IT going, IP going, regulatory going, all that stuff, like having my hand in a bunch of different things I really enjoyed. And then kind of deferred on like major topics of discussion to Amir or to whoever was CEO at the time, just because I trusted their judgment. But he would always encourage me, you have creative ways of thinking about things. Like you should, if you disagree, you should voice it, because we'd rather you disagree and end up somewhere better than we are now. And I think over the first 4 years, I was the COO, but like those exposures, we had a couple different CEOs who were great mentors to me, all who were perfect for that moment in time for the company, getting us from a startup, a student company, to a startup, getting us from startup to after Series A, so that we're now a more legitimate startup with financial backing. And then learned a ton from everyone, and discussed with Amir, and he was like, yeah, this is the job you should be doing for the company. And yeah, I didn't see it coming, but I'm really grateful to be here, because it's just been such a fun journey.
Yeah, no, it really is. And what do you think, like, when you look back at the journey, right? When you think about, I suppose, the real challenges with taking a student project to, I mean, your last round of investment, I looked on your website, some of the investors and some of the partners, and you got a partnership with Bayer, and it's the who's who in agriculture on your website, right? So you started off in a student kind of situation, and now it's like I don't know how much you raised in total, but certainly the last round, 20-odd million plus. What were the real kind of steps, the challenges and the steps that you had to really kind of take to, to get to where you got to?
No, it was an especially humbling journey. The young entrepreneur in some other industries may be quite exciting. I think the young entrepreneur in AgTech may not be as exciting. It's a difficult space. You need a lot of experience. There isn't much publicly available knowledge on how our agriculture system works. Like, how do farmers really grow food and feed you? Like, there's so much upstream, downstream, inputs, supply chain, so many things going on that there's no way a young, student would know. You may be in software or data science, you can pick up these skills quickly, or in medical devices, you may have background knowledge on a ton of publications that you could work on. But in our space, it's very difficult. It's very experience driven. And that's the thing that Amir and I lacked the most, was experience in the space. So we sought out early on to go recruit as many advisors as we could that were industry veterans, that were people who could lend us their credibility, people who could really help shape our strategy. And I think some of the lack of experience really benefited us at the beginning, because when we were starting out, the main feedback was, hey, why don't you guys just work on microbes and go move to the Triangle down in North Carolina and set up, because that's the move. Go find the novel bacteria and go work in North Carolina. And I think microbes have a great place in the AgTech space, both on biocontrols and biostimulants. But our assumption, our hypothesis was that if you could isolate like a potent trait, that potent biomolecule or that potent active, and put it into our encapsulation and delivery system, you can really stabilize and concentrate this active so that it's consistent, whether it's been on a shelf for a few months or a year. Every time you spray, you're going to get that consistency. So that was the kind of movement that I think our lack of experience helped us. Our earliest, other than Amir, Sep, Joey, and Zach, our close friends, were also scientists at UVA. And the five of us had really good complementary skills in material science, biomedical engineering, biochemistry. So, we weren't seasoned PhDs with good technical backgrounds either. So we didn't have the AgTech background. We didn't have the technical experience. So I think the world was our oyster. We read as many papers as we could. We stitched together what we liked and kind of created our own platform technology. And, with our advisors, and then everything we did was third-party tested. I mean, we still don't have insects or fungi here at our lab. Everything we create, we send out for someone to third-party validate it. Because one of the things you'll see in AgTech is that your own generated data isn't going to be trusted, especially by the majors. And they have every right to do so, because you're only incentivized to show your best data that you've generated on your own. So when we say, hey, this esteemed university or this really good research center has tested our stuff, they've touched it, they felt it, they've sprayed it, they've seen it do its thing. It's still not as believable, but it lends you more credibility so that they'll be open to testing your products in their own hands.
Yeah. Tell me, when it comes to fundraising and it comes to, I suppose, investors, collaborations, partners, how much at that point, when you talk about credibility, how much is it a challenge to try and convince those individuals when you haven't necessarily, you guys are straight from university, right? From postdoc, as it were.
Yeah, I think, agriculture, everyone says it's a smaller industry. As soon as you hear about something that you haven't heard of, you can probably call 3 people and one of them will know about it and they'll have their own opinion on it. So your reputation is very important in this space. So early on, our first seed investors were were like top execs at a Turkish enzyme company because of our enzyme delivery platform. They were amazing, like early stage, just believed in the team. We think there's a lot of potential in this technology. Here's some seed funding and go ahead and see what you guys can get done. And then when we went to raise our Series A, that's when we started talking to the AgTech VCs. And our first major AgTech VC, Osprey Ag Science, was Carl Casale. He's the only AgTech VC who's never passed on us, because the first time he saw us, he invested, which is great to have that kind of support. He was former
first time, only one first time.
Yeah. Really? Oh yeah, every because as a founder, as an entrepreneur, every VC will pass on you at one point.
Yeah,
it's not, even if it's the same round, they may pass on you at the beginning and then they'll come in later. That's what happened with Lewis and Clark AgroFood for our Series B. We weren't ready yet when we first started raising our Series B, but we told them about the milestones you're about to hit, and they were true to their word. Like, if you hit these milestones, we'd be very interested in your B. But yeah, going back to the A, we had a less than 3,000 square feet lab. Carl flew in to Charlottesville. We said, hey, we want to take the rest of this hallway. We want to build some fermentation capabilities. This is the technology. This is the company. At that point, it was just 5 or 6 of us. We bought into the vision, picked up the phone, called Mike Wilbur over at Cavallo Ventures, the venture arm of Wilbur Ellis, one of the best distributors. And they, with that introduction, they took us very seriously to, take a look at us, and we're excited by the technology. So definitely, that Series A helped us get some AgTech experienced investors. Carl on our board. You'll see in like the AgTech space, boards are very different depending on where your VC money has come from. Some are very investor driven, like very financially understanding on returns. Some are very ag driven, like they grew up in ag, they know how things are supposed to be. And we got lucky that ours is like an ag financially driven board where they've all been and lived ag, but they're also very successful in the ag space and lead investment funds. So I think that was another great key force for us. Was this all sounds great in theory, but this is what's going to work. This is what's not going to work. A lot of that Series A work helped build us to get into the Series B, where Lewis and Clark, led by Larry, they came to Charlottesville. They saw our lab. They saw our empty warehouse that we're trying to build a facility, a fermentation facility in. Bought into the vision, even encouraged it because they understand how valuable a fermentation asset would be. Also got a good friend of ours and one of the, I think, rising AgTech VCs in the space, Amr at Vitra. I mean, he's been crushing it there and crushed it all at the various places he's been, but he brought a great strategic eye and invested in our company. And then very recently, Mark Brooks from FMC Ventures also joined our round. So it was a 25 million Series B. So built a really good, I think, I hate saying this word, but cap stack of, VCs and strategics that can really help guide us to, where we're headed.
Tell me, what do you think, on reflection of the journey, right? Where do you think, the main successes come from? Like, what are the things that you've done right? Is it right to say the most, or, when you look back, a couple of the key milestones or the key things that have enabled you to succeed?
Yeah. I'd say there are a lot more mistakes along the way than things go right. I don't think I take any of them back because of what we've learned from all those mistakes we've made. I think you can really get tunnel vision down a rabbit hole on some of the things you think are right. I think confirmation bias is something we should really be fighting every day. I think you're always looking for ways of proving what your path on is correct. I think it's more important to think about why your path may lead you down a path where you don't want to be. So I think a lot of those learnings from the mistake, I think you can get too cute with doing deals, talking to investors, I think losing the bigger picture. I think one of the best things I've heard is it doesn't matter if you're right at the beginning, if you're right at the end. You should be open to changing your mind, open to new routes to take your company forward. And it's funny how much work goes into one assay at a greenhouse or at a field, or a production run, making sure your yield is good. Obviously regulatory and IP milestones are huge, but what really drives the company forward, and I think this is what we did well through the funding hysteria the last 2 years where the markets were frothy. We didn't use milestones like just hiring and growing as our value drivers. It was still scaling and getting field trial data, developing new products, and accelerated them into greenhouse trials, and then partnerships with the majors. I think it's harder to get partnerships with the majors than it is to get venture capital funding. They'll look at your tech and they'll do an evaluation of your technology, fine, but for them to sign a commercialization or co-development agreement with you and actually give you non-dilutive funding, because it's basically it's revenue, for them to pay you to do co-development or things like that, that is a very difficult task. Speak with a lot of founders about it. In our space, there aren't that many majors, so you don't get too many shots on goal in our industry. So you got to make sure that when you have a product that's ready, it's got to be tested multiple times at multiple sites before you put it in their hands. Which goes back to how we started, which was having things third-party tested. That shaped out nicely for us down the road because we had a great network of third-party testing sites where we could get a lot of data and be like, all right, we're confident with this batch. Let's send it to them and hopefully it sticks when it hits their hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, did you have many discussions? Did you have to learn the hard way with discussions with partnerships with majors? Like, were there many that you had to have?
Yeah, of course. There was like one partnership we had that was going great. This was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was going really well. The data was looking good. They were excited enough to be like, let's do maybe one more active ingredient in collaboration. We got a bit overzealous in our budgeting request. I think we requested too much, and that's a huge turn because it's, is it the first deal you're going to do with someone, or is it the last deal you're going to do with someone? If it's the first deal, there's many deals to come, and if you're being unreasonable already, they have the end goal in sight. Is this a technology we're going to license? Is this a company we're going to buy? There's a major negotiation coming up if this is successful. And if this is how they treat one success, how are they going to treat the rest of the path down? So those are one of the major learnings in deal making with corporates. And then there's deal making with VCs where we get bogged down in our valuations and our share pool, and they have their own model. And if you don't fit in their model, no matter how much they want to invest in you, they can't make it work. And so I think you can miss out on really good VCs at some points in your fundraising journey if you're a bit too hard-headed or a bit too stubborn. As founders, that's just how we are. I think the market and what we think are very different things, but we just got to basically rebalance ourselves to the market. When you raise, what year is it? 2022, 2021, 2020, it's very different.
Big differences, yeah.
Huge differences. But I think throughout the process, we learned that, a couple percentage points here and there, in the grand scheme of things, isn't that big of a deal if you're getting top-notch investors who are going to be able to ride with you through the rest of the journey. So I think that was like those two. I think those are major for the AgTech founders is, make sure you're doing deals in a way that sets you up for success down the road, and then don't get too bogged down in your valuation when you're.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. And I suppose thinking about the end game as well, like thinking about the cycle and how quickly the market moves. Has the end game for AgroSpheres changed at all over the last few years? Like, i.e., where you see yourselves and where your overall, I suppose, vision and mission are for the company?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I'll give us credit for is like staying on track to a vision we put together. We were just looking at this deck we put together back in 2017. I mean, it's not a pretty deck, but the content is good. The content was like, we're going to be working on RNA. We're gonna do it both on crop protection, but there's a crop enhancement stimulant path. We're going to be replacing various chemical-based agents and formulation. Now you see the big push to remove microplastics and petroleum-based formulation components out of pesticides. So the content and the vision for the technology, I think, has stayed it's evolved, but on the right path. Like we haven't like, let's go, capture carbon with our technology. Like that's just something we can't really do. But I can see how some companies will look at a certain industry and be like, all right, we should be going that direction because that's what's hot right now. For us, like we stay true to it. Biological crop protection, although not greatly proven yet, needs its place in future of agriculture. And that's the goal we're working towards.
Yeah. Because you hear a lot, don't you, about the challenges, over the years, big growth in biologicals, but then the challenges when it comes to performance. So, so I'm right in thinking your real value proposition here, right, is around the ability to be able to encapsulate the project, the molecule, so it can actually deliver superior performance, right?
Exactly. So like our first biological fungicide that's pending approval Typically this active without our encapsulation, you have to spray it maybe twice a week, maybe more if it's like a hotter climate. And we can take it to bi-weekly to monthly sprays, so you can spray it every 2 weeks to 4 weeks. Now you're spraying on the right cycle. It's tank mix compatible, so that farmers can mix it with their fertilizers or other things. Like a lot of biologicals may need to be sprayed on at their own. They may need to be sprayed multiple times in a week. So really like putting that like a very easily assimilatable, like a really easy way to integrate this technology into your existing practices, but it's also biological. Like we don't start with, hey, we have an organic option for you. It's, hey, we have a new mechanism of action. It'll help reduce resistance. It'll be as effective as this chemical that you're spraying. You don't have to replace all of your chemical sprays with our stuff. We know that's going to make you uncomfortable and going cold turkey off chemical pesticides after you've been spraying them for however long.
That's a big challenge, isn't it? Right.
Yeah, that's not you're just like, hey, you're spraying this chemical 10 times, just do ours and you're good. Like, hey, this season, try us 30% of the time, replace this spray 30% of the time, and then see if you can do half of the sprays next season. See if you can build some goodwill there. Because farmers have been burned by, some of them just think all biologicals are snake oil. And that's not their fault. That's the fault of the industry for selling them snake oil. And so I think those are some of the challenges that we're facing. And then the last point is, oh, and by the way, it's organic, it's biodegradable, it's good for the environment. You could see a yield boost. But the important point are it's a new mechanism of action. It won't cost you anymore. And you can rotate it however much you like to get comfortable with it. And I think that's the path for our first product.
Yeah, interesting. Do you spend a lot of time, I mean, I think you must do, but in terms of talking to farmers and out there in the field?
Yeah, so we're like in Virginia, we have a really strong wine community. So a lot of great grape growers. So we spend a lot of time with these growers. There's a Virginia wine board, there's a Monticello wine group. Like in Virginia, we've done a lot trying to talk to growers and understanding, their needs here. Virginia's climate is very different than California. Virginia's very humid, very rainy. California is a bit more dry. And for farmer insight for the rest of the country, we have good relationship with distributors. So they have field managers, they have people on the fields at all times. And they're talking to their growers constantly on what they're looking at, what they need. So I think that's an area where some startups have done a really good job going directly to farmers. It takes a serious sales machine to be able to go do that. We're just not at that stage for our company to even consider something like that. And so from the get-go, and this was, advice from our board, is get really good relationships with distributors, because you're going to need them, and you're going to need them more than they need you, because they have so many products they can sell. And if you're going to try to go to a farmer and sell this one product that you have, and they're selling 15 products to this farmer, and there's a nice spray cycle, here it is, spray this, like they're going to more likely go with that option than with whatever you're trying to sell them. So and they've done it for a very long time and they're very good at it. So that's a great place to get the customer feedback as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a great product. And tell me, from a regulatory viewpoint, when do you hope to have it, I suppose, in the market?
Yeah, if all goes to plan, we'll have everything approved by the end of next year. So I think we can launch like a soft launch towards the end of next year and go really big in 2025. EPA is understaffed and underfunded, and so it's difficult for them, especially with the backlog from the pandemic. So they're working their tails off, and we can always expect delays, and we're working with them very closely to ensure we hit our milestones and get everything on time. And just really grateful for the effort they're putting in. I know a lot of other groups may be frustrated with how things are planning out, but if you really go to them and talk to them and understand what's going on, all they want are better, safer products in the hands of farmers, but they have to ensure that they've done their risk tolerance analysis, all the things that need to be done to ensure that the products they are approving are safe. So that's another interesting area of the work that I really appreciate the regulatory aspect of it, making sure we get cutting edge products into the market and knowing that they're going to be safe. It takes maybe 2 years, give or take an additional year depending on delays. I know startups will say 18 months, but that's like if everything is perfect. I think 30 months is more of the actual average.
Yeah.
What you need done.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I mean, that will be clearly a real landmark moment when you get that approval and you're able. And what about scaling it? You spoke about the fermentation side. Did you build that facility then in Virginia, or is that kind of in play, that fermentation?
Yeah, we announced we're going to build it back in May. The governor of Virginia came, with the Secretary of Agriculture of Virginia also came to the event. The state's helping us with some incentives to be able to build and grow here. And so hopefully by this time next year, it'll be up and running. Amir and Reese are actually in the Netherlands meeting with the manufacturing groups who are like building out the tanks, the stainless steel tanks and the utilities for us. So yeah, that could be a very special moment where we have our first production run here in Charlottesville, Virginia, out of a facility that we've built ourselves. Fermentation class, there's going to be a lot of new molecules, a lot of new bioactive ingredients that are going to be important as we rely less on chemical synthesis. And so we're very passionate about the fermentation asset class in general. Our technology is one application of it. It's a great use for it. But getting really good at building fermentation facilities and operating them, it's another valuable asset that we think for the company.
Without doubt. Yeah, without doubt. I suppose the biomanufacturing transformation really. There's just been such a shortage of capacity for a number of years now. It's funny talking with companies, they're all looking for CMOs and CMO relationships. They're very difficult to find. Great
time to be a CMO. They can get
business
pricing from you.
Business. You just supply and demand is just you don't have to worry about customers, do you? They're queuing up for you. It's a great business to be in, as it were. And also, I mean, for the company as well, it sounds like you're so, I suppose, multidisciplined with skills and skill sets and capability, right? It's that must be a real challenge in bringing so many, what can be disparate and different organizations to come together, as it were. I've always found. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it was one of, I think, our hesitancies when we first started out was we're going to need PhDs. How are they going to respond working under non-PhDs? Our entire management team doesn't have a PhD. I don't have one. Amir doesn't have one. Seth and Joey, they don't have one and kind of lead the R&D direction. And it's part of the interview process. And you can find that a lot of the really amazing scientists, they don't care about the hierarchy of degrees. They want to work on cutting edge technologies. They want to work with people who see their space a little differently. Coming out of a PhD and a postdoc, you may be specializing in one really narrow area. You may be learning a lot of skills. But what we would find is that when they want to break into industry, they don't want to just be working on a certain process in the bench. It may feel like grad school again, where when you come to a startup like AgroSpheres, you're learning a new technology, you're learning a new space, and you are getting an interdisciplinary flavor of biology, molecular biology, but also polymer chemistry, genomics, things like that. So, at first when they come in, they're a bit always skeptical. Like, what do they know that I don't know? How does this thing work? But couple weeks in, couple months, working with the technology, seeing some results, seeing some data come in, the buy-in, like that moment when we get the buy-in is, I think, one of our favorites. Is, wow, more people are believing in this technology. More people want to work on this technology and develop it with us. And we're doing it here in Charlottesville, Virginia, where it's not the most typical place to build a startup. We have a very diverse team too. I think we come from 7 different countries. There's 14 languages that are spoken in our office. And to be able to do that here in Charlottesville, relocate people to maybe a smaller city, There's no easy feat. And so the people who come here and want to work here are actually passionate about the company, the technology, and about building a community here.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, no doubt you would have thought about moving to the Research Triangle Park at some stage. What kept you in? You know, clearly I could see you've got close links with the community, right? But what kept you there?
Yeah, I think cost to move to like the Triangle or to Boston or to San Diego or like those areas in the States, like it would have been a significant cost. And like lab spaces there are a lot more expensive than lab spaces here. So we kind of started with that kind of scrappy, frugal mindset where it's like, if we can, if the time comes where we're crushing it and we can pick anywhere we can go, maybe at that point we can consider it. But right now we need to build the foundation of the company. We need to prove out the technology before so that we can open up pools of funding to then think about that next step. And as we started growing here, we really like the city. A lot of people love to live here.
I've heard it's beautiful. I've heard it's a beautiful spot.
Yeah, you should come out, Simon.
Yeah.
It's the on-site interview is more of our kind of pitch, because when we bring someone on site, we know we want to hire them. So we bring them on for an interview, but we pitch the company. We pitch the city, we take them around town. They fall in love with it, and it makes it much easier to recruit. I've been involved with various nonprofits in the city as well. Charlottesville BioHub, Venture Central. In Charlottesville BioHub, we're fostering the biotech community here in Charlottesville. There's like 70 plus biotech companies here. A lot of us didn't know we all existed. We're trying to bring that community together. That's another great part of attracting talent, is going to a city where there's more biotech talent around you, working at different companies, different people you can meet out downtown or at a restaurant that are working on biotech. I think that's also very important. And then through Venture Central, supporting small businesses where founders and the community are from a diverse background, where maybe they don't have access to the right channels to get capital and things like that. So those are two areas I'm really passionate about working in, and serve on those boards to help the community, because it does reward AgroSpheres as well. It helps strengthen our community and our hiring efforts. So I think growing through those motions like made it even easier to stay in Charlottesville, Virginia. The city was just so welcoming and such an easy place to grow.
That sounds great. Thank you. And tell me about final thing for me. When you think about the hopes and dreams for the company from where you are now, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it'd be a couple things could happen. Ideally, we're early in our career and we want to work at AgroSpheres and build this company for forever if we could. Take it all the way as far as we can. Have products in the hands of farmers in the US, in South America, and East Asia. Reduce chemical pesticide usage maybe at first by 30% and then by 50%. Reach that kind of goal. Really become a leader. When you think of sustainable agriculture, you think of AgroSpheres. You think of a small startup in Charlottesville, Virginia, growing into one of the many groups who are pushing to take our agriculture industry into the next generation. And we'd love to be, one of those companies that can point and say, hey, we were there on the cusp of chemical to biological innovation. And with our technology, we made it easier to use biologicals with chemicals. And then we enabled the biologicals that are potent enough to replace some of these chemicals, so that we can shift our industry forward into a more sustainable manner.
That's a great vision and a great mission. And listen, congratulations for everything you've done. You must be super proud. And yeah, it's great, real pleasure for you coming on today. Thanks a lot for your time. And I wish you all the best on the onward journey. And I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks for having me, Simon. It's an absolute pleasure to speak with you and to be on your podcast. There have been some amazing leaders and key stakeholders who've come on your podcast. So just to be in the same list as these people it's very exciting for me as well. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure.